The great Dave Sims on the call for the Seattle Mariners. Cal Raleigh joining us now live on High Heat. Cal, thanks for taking a couple minutes to be with me today. Take me back through that moment, if you don't mind. You pinch hit home run to send your team to the postseason for the first time in over 2 decades. Could you even feel your feet hit the ground when you were running the bases?
No, I didn't really realize what was going on. I kind of blacked out around the bases, and it was a crazy time.
All right, so you come off the bench. You know it's a huge moment. Take me through the at-bat, if you don't mind. What are you trying to do there?
I was just trying to keep it simple. I wasn't really even thinking about hitting a home run, honestly. I just trying to get on base, trying to have a good at bat. Coming off the bench isn't always the easiest thing to do. So, just trying to, work a count and get on base and hopefully hand over the next guy. And, luckily I got a good pitch to hit and drove it out.
You're being very humble about this, but when you are a young man growing up playing baseball in your backyard, are you dreaming of a moment like this? Most of the time we hear, bottom of the ninth, game 7 of the World Series, but I would have to say this one's just equally as nice.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much grow up dreaming about a moment like that, and for that to kind of come to fruition and to happen was certainly really special, and something I'll never forget.
There's a 17-year-old young man that caught the baseball. He said all he wanted was for you to sign it. What was that moment like, meeting him and knowing you could get that ball back?
It was awesome. He had mentioned it was his first game ever too, so it was his first game, and he got to catch that ball, and it was pretty cool. He got to come down the field and celebrate with us, and made sure to get him a bat and a ball, and I'm gonna try to get him out to a few games next year as well.
That's awesome, and a lot to look forward to when you're talking about the Mariners. He has a lot to look forward to as a fan. What makes this team so special, Cal, in the 2022 season, but also moving forward? What are you looking most forward to?
I'm just looking forward to building off last year. Obviously it was a great, step, making it to the playoffs, ending the drought, kind of, like I said, taking that next step. And, we felt good about this year. Unfortunately, we didn't make it as far as we wanted, but we know what the end goal is. And, we're really looking forward to, spring training and hopefully having some new faces there. And that's what we've been hearing. And hopefully that's what happens.
It's one thing to get into the postseason. You guys have been wanting to do that for over 2 decades. Nobody knows that better than you. But then you get to the Astros in the ALDS. Tell me a little bit more about the feel that was going on in the dugout, in the clubhouse, as you guys went throughout that series against them.
Yeah, I mean, I've never experienced playoff baseball before, but getting to experience that was awesome. Unfortunately, we didn't get it done. But like I said, I think that was a good stepping stone, heading into this year. We know what it takes. We know what we have to do. We know who we have to beat, and we know what how much ground we got to make up. So we got a lot of work to do. It's not going to be easy. Nothing's going to be handed to us. And obviously the Astros are their team beat. They won the World Series, and we know we have to go through them to make where we want to go, and that's the goal.
Yeah, you certainly don't have to hang your head when you lose to the eventual World Series champions. You were known, Cal, as an offense-first catcher. You made great strides defensively, particularly in 2022, a Gold Glove finalist. How much pride do you take in being able to really have a well-rounded game?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I've it's kind of been something that my dad taught me growing up. It wasn't when I got to Pro Bowl, but I've always tried to be good on both sides of the ball. It's a really demanding position back there. You got a lot of things you got to deal with: game calling, blocking, throwing, making sure the pitchers are in the right spots, making sure they're doing what they're doing. So, it's more important than the hitting aspect, I think. So it's a really big deal, and I try to take pride in that.
You mentioned your dad, and I know that you lean on your dad heavily when it comes to going through and navigating the ups and the downs. He signed with the Red Sox on a minor league deal, never quite made it to the majors, but I know you look to him for a lot. Can you speak more about that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, he's the reason I'm here today. So he was a coach. I was always at his practices growing up. I feel like I was kind of one of his little players, and I was his bad boy and everything. So getting to be around him and around his teams was certainly really special. And I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. And I think it's helped me out greatly, even to this day.
Baseball family. Your Uncle Matt, I understand, was drafted by the Expos in the 14th round, and then he ends up being roommates with the guy that ended up signing you with the Mariners. Tell me more about that relationship with your Uncle Matt and his Double-A teammate was Scott Hunter, who found you and signed, well, I guess not found you, but signed you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize it till after I was drafted, and I was talking to my uncle, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I was in your scouting director's wedding," and I was like, "I had no idea." And he called and told me, and it's just kind of a funny story, and it's crazy how the baseball world connects, so many people, and how it's like a small world. It's crazy, who you meet and all the connections you make.
Yeah, everybody knows everybody. Okay, so I hear you're a big man on campus when it comes to the Seahawks, that 12th man raising the flag. You're already a hero in Seattle because of the pinch hit home run. What was that experience like being there in Seattle? Unfortunately, they lose the game in overtime to the Raiders, but tell me more about that experience.
It was awesome, to get up there and getting to raise the flag. It's a really big deal there. I don't know if many people have, got to witness, people raising the 12th man flag or anything, but it's a really big deal. And for me to get to go do that and experience that in front of all those fans and how loud it was something I'll never forget. And it was really special.
Yeah, it's loud, and that's what they say. That 12th man is so important. I remember when the Seahawks were playing the Broncos in the Super Bowl in New York. It was just as equally loud there with Seahawks fans. Are you a big football fan? Who's your team?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy football. Obviously, growing up, I watched a little more college football because my dad was a college coach. So, I always followed them, and I went to Florida State. So, I'm a Nole fan. Hopefully, they're going to make a good bowl this year. But, I kind of taken on the Seahawks fan, 12th man thing. So, I'm a Seahawks fan now. And, I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, that's smart. Smart to say that, especially since they let you raise that flag and do the rally towel and all that good stuff. Cal, what is the one thing that you want to work on as far as your game is concerned for next year? You're obviously a switch hitter, good power from the left side of the plate, but what's the one thing you want to improve upon?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. You go into the off season, you try to make yourself better for the next year. I don't know if there's one specific thing that I'm leaning on. I just want to become, a more consistent, everyday player. And I think, that's one of the biggest challenges, young players coming to the league face is just, learning routines, becoming consistent, understand what you do well, what you don't do well. And I think if you can, put a consistent season together and have quality at bats and quality games behind the plate, I think that speaks volumes.
Well, Cal Raleigh will never have to buy a meal in Seattle ever again. Make sure you go to Japanesa and get some great sushi. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. We look forward to watching the rest of your career.